Real esoteric spirituality without all of the fluff, without all of the nonsense. This is the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel. Click subscribe and then hit the little bell button so that you can be notified whenever I've uploaded a video or when I'm doing the live Q&A videos. Hello, Thunder Wizards. All right, so there's a lot of things I wanted to talk about, and we'll get to it as well. We'll see what comes out of it. I got a lot of things that I want to say. So, the title of this, actually, what is the title of this video? The title of this video is that Jupiter destroys the fear matrix associated with Saturn. And I think I threw the word reptilian in there. So this is a very popular thing for the reptilian crowd, those who want to talk about reptilians and find reptilians everywhere. They want to talk about the Saturn-Moon Matrix. Now, I've done a video on the Saturn-Moon Matrix and what that's all about, and Rahu, which is the snake demon, which is the north node of the moon that blocks out the sun and the moon. So I recommend that you go watch those. But specifically what I want to focus on is what the source of this is. The source of the fear. There is nobody listening to me. Nobody listening to me who is interested in reptilians who does not have fear. And so my question to you is, to anybody listening, really to anybody, my question to you is, do you want to be afraid? Do you want to be trapped? Or do you want to be free? It's a simple question. And I want you to answer it honestly. As we go through this, we're going to find out whether or not you really want to be free. I'm assuming everybody is going to respond that they want to be free, that they don't like being afraid, that they want to feel powerful, and they want to be free. So as we go through this, we'll find out maybe that you like to be afraid. Maybe you like being imprisoned. Nobody thinks that, but people go out of their way to be imprisoned and to stay frightened. So we're going to take a look at some of those things. So let's take a look here at my notes. So Saturn. Why is Saturn associated with the reptilian agenda? Why is Saturn associated with reincarnation and being lied to and taken prisoner and forced to come back to be a human being? Well, in order to understand that, we need to understand from an astrological perspective what Saturn is. Saturn represents restriction. So this universe would not exist. In fact, nothing. My glasses here would not exist if it wasn't for some restrictive force. Because for these molecules to stay together and to hang on my face and be themselves, there has to be some constrictive aspect, some force that holds them together. Otherwise, they'd fly apart. So you wouldn't be a human being. You wouldn't be who you are. You wouldn't have your identity if it wasn't for some kind of restriction. But obviously, restriction isn't helpful if it becomes too much. Too much restriction makes us trapped. So this is why Saturn is associated with it. And again, I've talked about that in the video, what Saturn really is. But all of these theories that you hear flying around the internet about reptilians and about being forced to come back and being trapped in a matrix, there is partial truth to that, but it's only partially true. For somebody who is trapped in this fear-based, restrictive projection of the universe, somebody who's trapped in that, there is no escape. And for somebody who's trapped in that, they are a victim. So there is a planet that counteracts the force of Saturn. And the planet that counteracts, actually Saturn and Rahu. Rahu again is the snake demon who is the north node of the moon. Who, if you want to, if you can, in a sense, say that Rahu forces you to reincarnate. You could say that. Saturn and Rahu work together. And Jupiter is the planetary force that counteracts Saturn. Saturn is restriction. Saturn is judgment. Saturn is karma. Saturn is the judge. I'm getting annoyed because the internet is really having a hard time streaming right now. It's just so annoying to me. I should be able to click a button and have it just stream. It's just so freaking annoying. So there must be a lot of people on their machines. That's why I wait this long. Because if I do it any earlier on the weekends, it becomes very restrictive. So that's it. I'm moving out of the country. I'm going to go to Australia and try there. So Jupiter is the force of expansion. And Jupiter is the force of self-confidence. This is important to understand because Saturn, when Saturn is very strong and has a very strong effect on somebody, the end result is that they feel criticized. They feel criticized, they feel restricted, they feel a lack of self-confidence. This is one of the things that Saturn does. So the whole idea of the Saturn-Moon Matrix, the whole idea of the Reptilians, the whole idea of aliens or entities or demons controlling us, that whole concept, when it is adopted, when the mind allows itself to accept that as a complete idea as opposed to just a part of the whole, then what ends up happening is that you have somebody who is living completely in fear. And this is, if there is an agenda, assuming that you believe in the reptilians, if there is an agenda for the reptilians, it is fear. And that's why I said earlier, my question to you is, what is it that you want? Do you want to be free? Do you want to be trapped? Do you want to feel confident? If you want all of these things, then you need to examine why you have chosen and what has motivated you to choose believing in this idea of being trapped, being lied to, being manipulated. Because it's very simple. We can simply take the force of Jupiter, which is expansion, and which is a defense for human freedom. So we look in the mythology, all of the lightning gods, whether they're Thor or Jupiter or Zeus or Indra, any of the lightning gods are gods that represent freedom for the human race. And this is why in the Norse mythology, Thor is always fighting the giants. He's the giant slayer. Again, I'm kind of going slow here because I really want to wait and see that the internet's going to get itself together. Because this is just getting really annoying. I can see that things are stopping and starting, but anyway, it's going to be whatever it's going to be. So I can see there's a lot of stuff on here and people are starting to want to ask questions. And you know, the best way to get my attention, if you're new to this live streaming, is to write the word question and then ask a question, a well thought out question. There's going to be a lot of people, especially if they're new, they're just going to be dropping their opinions and doing things like that. And I'm going to bypass anything that's not a question. What I am doing differently now that I don't do on the subscription channel is I will now entertain any question no matter how new it is. Before there were questions I just wouldn't answer if you didn't know what it was that I taught. By the way, in case you're new to the channel, please go up here to courses.thunderwizard.com. It's important. I've got these links up here for a reason. People contact me and they say, where can I find your books? Where can I find out this? That's what these links are here for. Go to courses.thunderwizard.com. That'll show you everything. Scroll down there, look for my books, my videos, the services, astrology readings, rune readings, all that kind of stuff. And we'll talk about neo.thunderwizard.com later. All right, so let me see if there's any points that I want to get to before I take any questions here. So Jupiter is seeking to give expansion. Jupiter is the planet of spirituality. Jupiter represents the priest, represents the temple, represents spiritual knowledge that goes beyond words. And so when you have this power of expansion, then what ends up happening is that people have an experience of feeling safe. They end up feeling self-confident. They feel divine. They feel connected. This is the power of Jupiter. Saturn is, bear in mind, we live in a universe that is a universe of balance. This is what a shaman is all about. A shaman is a practitioner who acts as a mediator between all of the forces to help facilitate balance, whether it be in themselves, in whoever they're healing, or in their society, their village, whatever it is. This is the force of the shaman to bring balance. So if you had Jupiter and Jupiter just continued to expand, then we would have tremendous imbalance. In fact, Jupiter is seen as the most benefic of planets, meaning the most kind of planets. But there's a lot of diseases that are associated with Jupiter being out of balance. So we need Saturn. We need this restrictive force of Saturn. So we need to have karma. We need to have the understanding. When Saturn puts his thumb on you and you feel it, this is, by the way, every single person listening to me who believes that they are being, hang on, is that something doesn't seem right? Nope, everything's right. Who believe that they've been lied to, who believe that they are trapped. You have Saturn. Saturn has his thumb on you. And so the response to Saturn when he's got his thumb on you is to fight. And to fight against feeling trapped and restricted. That restriction that you feel, whether you feel oppressed, you feel criticized, you feel limited, you feel trapped, you have fear. All of those feelings are designed to get you to stop and to take a look at yourself and ask, okay, how did I get myself here? When you start asking the question of, how did I get myself here? Then Saturn starts lifting his thumb off of you. But it's sort of like the harder you push back, the harder Saturn will stick his thumb on you and just keep you pinned to your issues. So we have this other power of expansion, which is Jupiter. Now, those of you who've been following my channel, you know that the first thing that I teach is that you must drop all fear-based belief systems. If you're going to get anywhere in my channel, you have to drop that. You have to drop the belief that you are being controlled. I'm going to check and see if I'm on my internet. Sorry, my internet is just coming in and out. No, that's right. Yeah. It's just there's a ton of people on the internet. There's nothing I can do about it. Those of you who have been following me know that what I teach is that you've got to drop all fear-based beliefs. There are people who are addicted to fear-based belief systems. They're addicted to it. If you're somebody that goes onto YouTube and you search for reptilians and reptilians caught on camera, and reptilians this, reptilians that, you're addicted. You're addicted to the fear. I'm really not following a logical train of thought here. There's a bunch of things I want to say, but because I want to start telling you the origins of this whole Anunnaki reptilian stuff, but I don't feel like I want to do that. So what I want to focus on here is that Jupiter will give you self-confidence. So the opposite of this kind of fear is self-confidence, and this comes from Jupiter. Those of you who follow me know that I have very little, I have very little sympathy for people who want to complain about being trapped. People who say that they have been lied to and that the beings of light or the elites or the Illuminati or the whoever have lied to them and they are trapped and blah blah blah. I have very little sympathy for that. And I'll tell you why that is. There's a reason why I am called the Thunder Wizard. Because this power of Jupiter, which is the power of self-confidence, the power of divinity, the power of expansion, which is generosity, it's the power of expansive thinking, which is acceptance. This power, when the priest goes to help somebody and says to them, here, let me share with you why you are a divine being. If the person wants to fight with the priest about that, the priest will then turn into a lightning god. This is what Jupiter does. When Jupiter, by his normal benevolence, being kind and expansive and complimentary and gives you good things and all that, when the person he's trying to minister to does not respond, he becomes angry. And this anger is not that he wants to condemn. That's what Saturn does. Saturn will condemn, Saturn will criticize. This is, of course, the negative experience. Saturn doesn't do any of those things. That is the negative experience people have of Saturn, is that he criticizes, that he imprisons, that he judges. So when Jupiter comes along to free somebody by pointing out their divinity, pointing out how they have control over their life to achieve what they want, to be what they want. When the person, for whatever reason, doesn't respond to that, Jupiter becomes angry, and Jupiter turns retrograde, and Jupiter starts shooting out lightning bolts. These lightning bolts are to fight the negativity, to fight the fear, to fight the lack of self-confidence, the lack of self-awareness. And so I am harsh with victims, people who have a victim mentality, and when I have the sense that somebody is addicted to being a victim, and they come onto my channel, and after one or two attempts to communicate to them, if I feel that wall, I turn into a very harsh teacher. And that is Jupiter retrograde. That's the lightning coming out to free the person. So this is who Thor is. Thor is Jupiter retrograde. This is why he fights demons. This is why he fights trolls, giants, and this is why he controls lightning. This is the whole point about this, because Thor is the power of defending your identity in this world. He is associated with the giants, which represents identity expanding beyond normal limits, which is what a giant is. A giant walks around, picks people up, bites their heads off, has no awareness of anything or anybody. That is when the identity becomes narcissistic. And Jupiter fights that. Thor specifically. Thor fights that and keeps it in check. For us, Thor becomes the defender of humans on this earth, their right to have their own identity, to have their own life, to have their own divinity. This is Jupiter retrograde. So I'll talk more about that, but I do see a lot of people coming on and asking questions, so I'll go ahead and answer questions and I won't babble on too long. And let's see here, let's scroll back here again. The internet just really seems to be having a hard time right now. Elliot Garcia, new to the channel. Welcome. Please write the word question before you ask a question. So I can tell, you know how I can tell you're new to the channel? Because you've just asked me if I do DMT. So the answer to that question is, actually the answer to that question is yes. Because DMT is naturally released in the brain, especially when you do things like Qigong and meditation. fuck, I'm getting so annoyed by this internet. So annoying. I really wish I'd get it together. I do it naturally. Do I buy DMT and ingest it? No. For that, I recommend you go onto my channel and you look for all of the videos that talk about power plants and hallucinogens. So you may have to put some effort into it. So I recommend that everybody who's new to my channel put some effort into finding out what is on my channel. And so I recommend the same for you. I'm not going to talk more about that. Short answer is I do it naturally. I don't do it. I don't ingest it. So again, please write the word question so I can best help you. Caesar Cassiano, why is it so hard to find purpose? Do you think we're smart enough to leave hints for ourselves? So there's a lot of assumptions in there. It's not hard to find your purpose at all. If you're having difficulty finding your purpose, it means that you are in conflict with yourself. Your purpose only comes from you. It doesn't come from anybody else. God does not give you your purpose. The universe does not give you your purpose. You are the only one that can give yourself your purpose. Your purpose comes from you. For that, I recommend that you go onto my channel. Again, everybody new. Whatever device you use, please go figure out how to search within somebody's channel. Don't be a sheep. Don't let YouTube just distract you from one video to another. If you like what I teach, go on there and look for it. So look for the Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. Go look for that. Go look for that on my channel. I've got a book by the same name, and I've got a whole playlist about it. I talk about it all the time. The short answer is it's not hard. That's not a question. Don't be a victim. Your real question is you want to say, how can I find my purpose? Not why is it so hard? Don't be a victim. So part of the thing that I can tell you is to stop thinking like that. I can tell that things have been challenging for you, but you don't have to buy into that. And the way to do that is to ask yourself, if I didn't have to make money, I didn't have to work a job, I didn't have to please my parents or school or God, if I didn't have to do anything to get anybody's approval, what would I do for fun? If you can't answer that question, that means you're in conflict. It means that you have an internal fight with yourself. You're trying to please your soul and other people at the same time. You have guilt and you have shame. So you're going to have to do some work. We talk about that a lot. Go look for that on my channel. All right, somebody's telling me where they got their planets. I don't know how to help you. You've got to ask a question. I'd like to learn how to be free. Okay, good. That's good to know. Thundra. I thought Thor... Is this a question? I thought Thor, being the source of electromagnetic force and resistance in the physical world, was the source of restriction of matter. No, he's the boundary. He's not restriction. He's the boundary. So restriction is, in fact, he fights against it. Because take the sun for instance. The sun. The reason why the sun burns is because it's this big giant ball of hydrogen. And it is so massive that the mass of it creates this intense gravitational field in the center of it. So the hydrogen is sucked towards the center of it, and the gravity is so intense that it causes nuclear fusion. The hydrogen molecules or atoms are fused together and explode and create this nuclear fusion explosion, which bounces around the sun for a few years, and when it finally makes it out, this is the rays of light that come out and hit us. This is what causes that light and the heat and the radiation. If it weren't for the electromagnetic force, that gravity in the sun would collapse the sun much more quickly. So it is the electromagnetic force that acts as a shield. It fights against that power of restriction, slows it down. It can't stop it, but it slows it down. And the Vedics knew this. The Vedic Vedic scriptures say that that Indra, which is the same as Thor, the electromagnetic force, Indra sits. No, that the sun sits in the east and worships Indra for long life and the power to rule. They knew that Indra, the power of the electromagnetic force, was slowing down the sun's consumption of hydrogen through the power of gravitation. And gravity is, we would see that as a giant, as a titan. And Thor fights against the giants and the titans. So Thor is not restriction. Thor is definition. Thor is the protection from that restriction. Okay? All right, so Jacob Locke, question: how does Jupiter relate to Sumerian and Enki or Enlil? So Jacob Locke, you're new to my channel, right? So now I get to go off on this. So it's really interesting because I didn't mention anything about Sumerians or Enki or Enlil or anything. So it's interesting that just by talking about Jupiter and talking about Saturn, you go to the what do you call that? The Anunnaki. So if you're listening to me and you are in this belief of the reptilian aliens who come to Earth and create human beings, right? Then you are of the belief that the Anunnaki are these extraterrestrials. So I want to ask you before we go any further, where did you first hear that? And do you know who first started talking about the Anunnakis as being aliens? Do you know the answer to that question? Because if you do not know the answer to that question, I can guarantee you, you have bought into a bag of nonsense. You have been manipulated, you have been conned, your fears have been manipulated so that you have bought into this idea that the Anunnaki, Enki, and Enlil and all of that have put you where you are. So, if you're not familiar with him, I want you to look for somebody called Zechariah Sitchin. Let me spell his name for you. I gotta write this down. Zechariah Sitchin. Go look for him. No, I didn't say witching. Don't spell for me. I know what I want to spell. Zechariah Sitchin. Go look for him if you've never heard of that name before and you believe in this Anunnaki, this belief that the Anunnaki are space aliens. This is a guy in, I think it was the 60s, who wrote a book, and he started writing books. And what he did is he took the Babylonian mythology and he started writing about the Babylonian mythology and started talking about Nibiru, saying it was a planet, and started saying that the Anunnakis were travelers from space and all that. But he had a very poor grasp of the language, his misinterpretation of the language, and his own fantasies he projected onto this. And, at the time he wasn't looked upon with anything, really great. But what's happened is people like David Icke have latched onto this guy's work and expounded on it. And you've bought into it. So Enki and Enlil and all of that has nothing to do with the planet Jupiter, because this is nothing more than the mythology of the Babylonians. It's no different from, in essence, from the mythology of Judaism, the mythology of the Norse, the mythology of the Greeks. Mythology is simply a way to talk about the gods. Enki and Enlil and all that, and the Anunnaki are the gods. They're not space aliens. If that bothers you, if what I've just said bothers you, and you feel like you're pissed off at me because I said that, I want to point out to you it's because you are addicted to fear. If you truly want to be free, and you don't want to be a victim, and you don't want to be enslaved, then for me to tell you that this whole Anunnaki stuff of being reptilians and all that is just completely, totally untrue, then you should feel, a sigh of relief. If you don't feel a sigh of relief and you feel angry, then that means that you are addicted to being a victim. And me giving you the keys to freedom angers you. So that's why I said in the beginning, do you want to be free or do you want to be a victim? Do you want to be a prisoner or do you want to be free? Okay? All right, so let's keep going. Brian Gertson, question. As a new exorcist, what does that mean? Not Catholic. I don't know what that means either. I was wondering if you have any insight into the nature of demonic entities that infect people with their presence. Sure, I do. I was an exorcist for years, and I have taught and practiced a form of energy work that is designed to fight demons, hand to hand. So I can absolutely tell you what demons are all about. First off, I want to ask you why you're an exorcist, why you would seek that out. I didn't seek out becoming an exorcist. I didn't. I would, I knew, I don't even know where I knew it, but I knew something about it. I had, I had a desire to fight negativity, and what ended up happening is that I would just walk into situations where people were possessed. And in many cases, I was the only one that had the ability. I mean, think of the odds of that. I mean, that doesn't happen every day, but for a period of years, there was like almost everywhere I went, I'd walk into some place and there was some guy on the floor. And I'm like, what's going on with him? Oh, he's possessed. And the guy's blah, blah. Everything that you see in The Exorcist, the movie, everything except for the head spinning around, I saw and experienced. So it's not that I don't believe in exorcism, but I didn't choose that. I didn't look for that. I didn't think that was a great idea at all. And in fact, it was, after the fact, after I would, do the exorcism on the person, the whole 6 or 12 hours after that is when I would be able to see in my mind's eye, energetically, what was really going on. And it was extremely unpleasant. And it wasn't something I sought out. So, you say you're a new exorcist. I don't know why you would want to do that. So, here's what I learned. Every single person that I did an exorcism on, I found that every single one of them had been physically, emotionally, psychologically, or sexually, or all four of them abused. And they understandably did not have any forgiveness for the people that had abused them. So I got into the habit because I figured it out pretty quick. When I see this, I already know this is what's happened. So, I do my thing. This is when I was a Christian. In Jesus' name, Satan, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd be able to talk to the person. And I'd say, who harmed you? And they would tell me, Uncle so-and-so, or my father, or whoever it was. And I'd say, if you want this demon to leave, you're going to have to forgive them. They'd say, no, I'm never forgiven. And then the demon would come back. So it became really clear to me that what was going on here was not that these people were victims. It's not that they're walking around and some demon, jumped on them and victimized them. This again goes back to this idea, that the whole premise of the reptilian conspiracy is that reptilians are victimizing humans, that humans are prey, that they're used for energy and all of that. That assumes that you are a victim. It assumes that you don't have any power. It assumes that the universe, God, the essence of the universe, is against you. Because why would the universe create you just so that you could be a victim of something or somebody else? So you've got to change that fundamental assumption. Yeah, I don't want you to believe in the Bible or God or Jehovah, because I think that's the source of victim mentality. But that whatever you want to choose to look at as the source of life and consciousness has only your best interest at heart. If you start from that, there's nothing that can touch you. Nothing can touch you. So there's no such thing as people being infected without their permission. And the point of that is, if you think, as an exorcist, that your job is to run around casting demons out of people and your job is to heal them, let me please set that straight for you. They're the ones that got themselves possessed in the first place. So at best, even if you have the ability to go and cast the demons out of them, if they don't deal with their own victim mentality, the demons will come right back. Because here's how somebody gets possessed. I'm so annoyed by the internet. It's driving me crazy. Why? Why can't we just have things work normal? The reason why they get possessed is, as I said, they've gone through some kind of trauma, and they are holding anger and resentment and unforgiveness towards whoever harmed them. Because for them to forgive their father, their stepbrother, their whoever it was, is going to be extremely emotionally painful. They're not only going to have to deal with the trauma that happened, but they're going to have to go through the emotional pain of being rejected, because that's the core of it. The core of it is that somebody that they were vulnerable to, who was important to them, didn't love them. And that's the real pain, being rejected and being betrayed by somebody that should have loved you. And for them to deal with that is far, far too emotionally painful and frightening. And so what has happened is the universe, just normal life, does not support the victim mentality. The energy of the universe is constantly pushing us every nanosecond to take responsibility for our lives. Every nanosecond. And so it takes a huge amount of energy to push that consciousness away. Because that consciousness is always saying, you got to forgive them. You got to let it go. Move on with your life. Take responsibility for your life. But if you have an agenda to hold on to being a victim, to being angry, then what happens is you end up in a struggle with the universe, and it's extremely exhausting and very painful, emotionally very challenging. And so these are people who seek to be distracted from their fears. And the distraction that they seek, it needs to be extreme. So they send out an energetic vibe out to the universe that says, please, please distract me from my emotional pain. Now, negative entities feed off of negative emotions because they themselves have rejected their true essence also. They're no different. They just don't have a body. In fact, many demons are human beings that die in that state of mind. And they run around, continuing to, because victims are very brutal, extremely brutal. And there's that phrase, hurt people hurt people. So whenever you have somebody who's a child molester, guess what? There's a good chance they were molested as a kid. It just repeats over and over. Unless you own the pain, you're going to turn around and become that. And so for those who are unwilling to deal with that very emotionally challenging scenario of owning up to what happened and feeling the pain and forgiving your abuser, you send out an energetic request out to the universe, and it becomes a contract. I remember a friend of mine telling me about a scenario where he was really, really, really depressed. I don't remember what happened. Somebody died or something, and he became really depressed, and he said he just really started indulging in being depressed. And he was really depressed one day, and he felt something come into the room. And it was dark and evil, and he felt it. And he, to his credit, he snapped out of it, and he said, nope, thank you, no thank you, I don't need you, thank you, go away. He figured it out. So people who are possessed, who are being all that, they are simply people who are wanting to stay in their victim state. They want to stay angry. They want to stay hurt because they don't want to go through the mourning of being, the true sadness of feeling betrayed and feeling hurt and opening themselves back up to the universe and to being loved and all of that. They don't want to do that. It's too painful. So why you want to choose to go do that, I don't understand. It tells me that either one of two things is going on. Either you truly are called to do this, or you don't know what the hell this thing really is. You don't know what it is to be an exorcist. If you think that you cavalierly say, I'm a new exorcist and I'm figuring this out, and can you tell me? I don't know if you are or not, but when you really, really get to see demons, in face to face, the real thing, it's not something that's pleasant, and it's not something that I think anybody chooses to do. They're either called to do it for whatever reason, and at some point they're going to come to the same conclusion that I did, unless they themselves are also wanting to be in that chaos and craziness. Because a lot of exorcists are those same people. They seek that chaos because they have their own emotional problems as well. So that's my thing. The best thing, if you find somebody who is possessed and you have an ability to help them, then you cast the demon out of them or do whatever you do to free them, and then tell them, now you need to start going to therapy, and you get them to a psychologist, or you get them to some spiritual counselor so that they can own up, and you get them to commit to do that. And if they don't, you say, if you don't deal with this, if you don't deal with the underlying problems, it's going to come back. So it's up to you. And I've seen no shortage of people who ended up right back where they started. And that's when I went, oh my God, I went through all that to exorcise the demon out of that person, and they're right back where they were, and I gave up. I said, you know what, that's not my job. That's their job. Anybody can be freed of that. So those are my thoughts about that. Paul Kupari, welcome to the channel. If you've got a question, please write the word question so I know that you're asking me a question. What's the relationship with Thor and Saint Michael? So you're new to the channel, right? So you have an assumption that I teach anything having to do with Christianity. Saint Michael comes from the Christian tradition, and if you want to know what I think about the Christian tradition, then I recommend that you go onto my channel and type in Christianity. Again, learn how to, I don't know if you can or not, but people find out how to search within my channel. Go onto my channel and type in the word Christianity. You see a bunch of videos come up. Go watch those things. There is no relationship between Thor and Saint Michael. Saint Michael is an angel. In the Abrahamic tradition, Saint Michael is a being that does not have any will of his own. He must obey Jehovah. Jehovah has complete control over him. And this is why in the Abrahamic tradition, human beings are seen as evil and sinful. Because Jehovah is a control freak. And he cannot stand anybody who thinks for themselves or has free will. He can't, not only can he not tolerate it, but he seeks to eternally punish them for simply having free will and acting upon that free will. Michael does not have any free will. Saint Michael is an angel, and he has to do whatever Jehovah tells him to do. Jehovah, all the gods exist. Name whatever god you want. Thor, Odin, Jehovah, whatever god you want. They exist, and they represent something within you. Jehovah, I am who I am, thou shalt have no other gods before me, is nothing more than the human egocentric narcissism. So anybody who worships Jehovah is worshiping their own narcissism. And the only kind of being that would serve that is a slave. So Saint Michael, the angel, would be a slave. Thor is a god of freedom. Thor defends human beings. Thor defends human beings' freedom and self-will and ability to take responsibility for themselves and have their own lives. You can't worship Jehovah and do that. Jehovah is about give away all of your will and completely bow down to me, and I am everything and you are nothing. Thor says human beings are the reflection of the divine on earth, and he protects them. So you can see I have a bias against Christianity. So if you really want to know what I teach, go find out what that's all about. Donna Marie B333 question. From your reading, you mean my astrology reading, go up here to courses.thunderwizard.com and look for astrology if you're interested in that. Donna Marie B333 question from your reading. Jupiter is in my 10th house and Saturn in my 7th. Will a positive partnership only come from success in my career? I have to kind of look at your whole chart for that. A positive partnership, do you mean a romantic partnership? I don't know. That's not enough information. I think you're reaching on that, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but will a positive partnership only come from success in my career? So what does that mean? If you're not successful in your career, you won't have a partnership? I mean, it's operating, there's a need. I guess why I'm squinting. See the squint on my face? I get this look on my face when I can tell that there's an emotional agenda, especially one that's coming from fear. You're saying, because what happens if you're not successful, then you won't have a positive partnership? I don't like that. I don't like where you're starting from. The way that I teach is that, if you want to have anything in your life, you acknowledge it. You want a positive partnership? Then you tell the universe that that's what you demand. And you say, show me what I need to do to accomplish that. That's a far better strategy than trying to pick apart your chart to see how that works. Astrology is really great if used in this one way. Let me find ways to empower the things that I already want and that I already like. But, if, I'm getting deeper and deeper into Vedic astrology, because it's a huge, even though I'm an astrologer, there's still a lot of things that I'm still studying. And there's a thing called Ashtak Varga, which I won't get into it, but I'm starting to look into that. And, in the beginnings of that, you're like, oh my God, we're screwed. But that's because we come at it, whenever we look at astrology, a lot of us, myself included, we look at it for, how can I fix this? How can I get that? Why isn't this working? We start from this negative place. And so you're going to always find something wrong. That's why people who are just beginning in astrology should not, really, they should just study it a little bit and then let it go, because they always find the worst in it. And then they focus on what looks like the worst, and they don't have all the information. So I guess that's what bothers me about that. I'd have to open up your chart and take a look at it, and that was going to take more time than we have tonight. But you have Saturn in the 7th and Jupiter in the 10th, and I need to know, what signs and what aspects and degrees and all that kind of stuff. So I guess I just want to say that I don't know in terms of your question, but put all that aside and just go after what you want. Just makes life a lot easier. And then use astrology to help you get what you want. Don't look at astrology to find restrictions, okay? All right, let's move on. Richard Bullard, question. Do you know the mystical reason why this nation, being a Christian nation, days of the week are named after pagan gods? Do the day in which a person is born identify them with that god? Wow, that's a lot. Man, you think a lot. That's a lot of thinking right there. First thing I want to say to you is stop thinking so much. It's not serving you. It's just not. The reason why the days of the week are named after the Norse gods is the same reason why we have this word in the English language right here, which I'm going to write down. We have one word in the English language that we use every day, multiple times a day. It's called weird. That word, W-E-I-R-D, comes from the original W-Y-R-D, weird. Weird, as you know, please go onto my channel and read about that. Weird is the fundamental law of the universe. It is the fundamental law of space-time and how reality is woven into existence. Now, this is a word that the Christian church, when it came in to Europe, wanted to wipe out. And it wiped out a lot of our mystical understandings, pre-Christian understandings, but it couldn't get rid of weird. Couldn't get rid of it. And so instead of it being the fundamental law of the universe, it was used in a pejorative way. Oh, that's weird. And originally, when somebody would say something that seemed superstitious, right? Because that's what they would say. The Christians would say, oh, they're heathens, they're pagan. Both the word pagan and heathen mean uneducated, means country dweller. Like, you know, when we say the word redneck, when we say the word redneck or hillbilly, we mean somebody who lives out in the boonies and is uneducated. That's how they described people who followed the old ways. They called them uneducated. Heathen, meaning they lived out on the heath, which is out in the country, or the pagan in Latin, which meant in the countryside. Pagans, oh, the countryside dwellers, the hicks. Oh, there's that hick over there, there's that redneck. Yeah, that redneck still believes in whatever. They don't believe in Jesus yet. So, weird, when somebody would say something that was superstitious, they would go, oh, that's weird. You know, meaning, that's nonsense, that's superstition. And then that turned into, weird turned into, I can't explain it. You know, I can't explain it by Christianity or by whatever science we have. It's just, it's the old way. It's weird. That means it's powerful. That's why weird, when you say that's weird, I can't explain it. That means that our ancestors, would have been able to explain what we think is strange and inexplicable and frightening. Weird. That's weird. That's why we still have Monday, Moon's Day, Tuesday, the god of highest awareness, the god of the Sky Father, Tuesday, Wednesday, Woden's Day, the day of Woden, Thor's Day, Thunar's Day, Thursday, Frigga's Day, Friday, and then Saturn's Day, Saturn, and then Sunday. That was because the Romans used their gods for the days of the week. And because Christianity was a Roman religion, they too couldn't change that around. And so Christianity brought that in and put it into the Anglo-Saxon language, whatever Germanic language. So it's really taken from the Romans, who couldn't get it out of their language. You know, they couldn't turn it into St. Michael's Day and Jesus's Day and Jehovah's Day. They couldn't do that because people were just too stuck on the old way. So I don't think there's any big mystical thing behind that. And does the day which a person born identify them with that God? Well, that's an astrology question, which, you know, I haven't really got into very deep. But again, I wouldn't go so deep into that unless it's something that's appealing to you. I was born on Tuesday, I believe. So does that connect me to two? I don't know. Elliot Garcia, question, how much are your books? Hi, Elliot Garcia, my friend, thank you so much for showing up. Please go to, as I said earlier, the links are there for a reason. Courses.thunderwizard.com. Go there and you can find all the links to everything, including my books. And then you can figure that for yourself. Let me say this to everybody watching. If you want to make progress in my path, you're going to have to put effort into it. That means paying attention. So that tells me you're not even paying attention to the screen you're looking at, because the 2 links are right there. That should have been the first thing you do when you get here, is click on those links. So go there and find out. Thank you for asking. All right, Jay's rabbit hole. Yeah, all right, let's see here. Who is that? Juby Bob throws $2 down. Thank you, Juby Bob. He says he got the book. Odin says Jesus was a coward. That can be found up there too. I recommend reading that book. Donna Marie B333 question follow-up. I wasn't seeking relationship advice, but asking if the Jupiter-Saturn dynamic works for all situations, where and how they appear. You know, there's a deep question in there, but I need far more information. For whatever reason, I'm not picking up on the thread of what your question really wants. So my apologies. I'd love to answer it, but I don't know what you're looking for there. Elliot Garcia. So the other thing that I recommend if you want to be my student is you're going to have to speak in full sentences and put context to what you say. This is part of our society. We live in an immediate society. I mean, I got on somebody's case who left a comment on one of the videos. Just to, look, assume I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Question, what can you do if that happened? If what happened? You got to get out of your narcissism and ask me a question. What can you do if thus and such happens? That way I can answer it. You know what I mean? Think, put some effort. I have this, I've always had this experience that even when it comes to driving, people who can't fucking drive their car, can't park. If people just put more effort into things and paid more attention, the world would go a lot more smoothly. You know what drives me crazy? When I go to the store and I see shopping carts all over the parking lot. It's just so much entitlement. Really, you can't, after you've unloaded your groceries, you can't walk back 10 yards and put it away yourself. You have to leave it in the middle of the parking lot, and then the supermarket has to hire somebody. When I was a kid, I remember, that was what you did. I remember being with my mom. People put their shopping carts back in the little thing. It was like expected that you would do that, but people have gotten so lazy. That now supermarkets part of their job is to hire people to go and round up all, because people are just so lazy and so wrapped up in themselves. Anyway, sorry, I'm not trying to come down on you too hard, Elliot Garcia, but if you want to ask me a question and it's important to you, put the effort into it. Write the whole question out. Otherwise, how am I going to know how to answer your question? T. Wells for President has threw down $5. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Let's see. What are we missing here? There's more down there. Jacob Locke says, Odin, go hard on American gods. I haven't watched it yet, so I can't talk about that. Jacob Locke, question. As far as Hinduism and Buddhism are concerned, 2 different religions coming from the same root, how do you feel it fits into the understanding of things or ascension? How do I feel what fits into the understanding of it? I don't know what you're asking me. That's too general of a question. How do Hinduism and Buddhism fit into the understanding of things or ascension? Those are 2 huge religions. You're going to have to get more precise than that, my friend. I honestly don't know what to do with that. Too general. Okay. All right, I'll go ahead and show that. Boom. All right, let's see. Juju, if you have a question, please write the word question, otherwise I may miss your comment. How do you have belief in your magic for a beginner? I don't know what you're asking me. How do you have belief in your magic for a beginner? Please have a specific question. I'm not sure what you're asking me. If you're asking that question the way it sounds, you want to know how do you sound like a Christian, because Christians have to have faith in order to believe in God. They have to have faith in order for God to heal them. So the universe doesn't work on faith. It works on action. And you're asking, how can you have belief so that as a beginner, how your magic can work? So what I would recommend is get rid of that idea that you need to have belief in order for magic to work. Second, I want to ask you, why are you doing magic? What is it you think you're going to get from it? You know, if you're using magic because you want to use it to control the universe, you know what I mean? So here's what I recommend that you do, my friend. Go up here where it says neo.thunderwizard.com. Go to that link. Follow the instructions on that page. That will give you what you're looking for, okay? Because, you know, if you really want to talk about your question, we need to talk about the 5 rules to master the matrix. That's really kind of what you're asking me. So I want you to change your idea about it. It's not what you believe, it's what you do. Your actions will stimulate the universe to respond to you and to obey you. You have to know what those actions are. Thunderstave Rangel. Okay, let's see what else. Jacob, all right, so, all right, you guys are just talking about stuff. So speaking of power, I am going to take a short break and show you where I get my power from. This is the power, this is one of the ways we were talking about fighting against demons and being an exorcist. This is one of the ways that I gained my power to do that. So I'll be right back. Hi, I'm Michael Denny of SpiritTao.com, and this is Celestial Negung Part 1. Celestial Negung means that this is power that is descending from heaven. And the idea is that we are all microcosms of the entire universe. You are the entire universe, and everything around you is simply the projection. You are looking within yourself. So when you look up into the stars at night, you're actually looking deep within your own body. When you look at the sun, the moon, the trees, the flowers, you're looking within yourself. This is Negung. And so what we're doing is we're simply releasing that infinity from within us. You are tapping into and releasing the power that is within our own body, our own cells, our own organs. So one of the reasons that I'm making this DVD is in the hope that the essence and the spirit of the teaching of the Shang Qing arts can be taught to the world at large, and it is my hope that the core essence of what the Shang Qing tradition is will continue to live and grow and evolve. As we move on into the Aquarian age, everything is changing. I don't need to tell you that. The entire world is changing, and what we are seeing now is that if people hold on to external things, they are very challenged in life. And those who are making the transition into the next phase that we are moving into in the world as we approach 2012, those who look within and find their source of strength from within, those are the people who are getting the most out of life and will make the transition into the next phase of evolution most comfortably. It is my belief that the Shang Qing tradition is one method whereby human beings can evolve into the next level of being in the most comfortable fashion and be able to take advantage of the rapid, energetic, mental, and spiritual changes that are going on in the world today. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about something that I've been thinking about recently. So, as you know, I harp on not being a victim. If you're going to get anywhere in this universe, if you're going to gain any power, you cannot be a victim. You can have whatever feelings you want. You can be afraid. There's nothing wrong with being afraid. There's nothing wrong with any feeling, because you can't control those. You have a little bit of control about feelings maybe that you indulge in or don't indulge in, you might have some control over that. But in terms of just having a feeling, you're not going to have any control over that. So that's okay. It's not about what you feel. Which is again what the law of attraction people want to tell you, is that you have to change your feelings and you have to have positive feelings all the time. That's nonsense. Feelings are great in one way. If you have positive feelings, they motivate you to take action. That's something feelings are very good for. But what do you do when you don't have positive feelings? Not take any action? You still have to take action in life, regardless of how you feel. So being a victim is not going to serve you. It's definitely not going to serve you when it comes to the universe. The universe is not codependent, if you know what that word means. The universe is not codependent, meaning you cannot emotionally manipulate the universe to do things that you want. Now, children, from the age of, I think, 3 or 6 days now, scientists are saying that from the age of 3 or 6 days, children, infants begin to know how to manipulate their parents. And one of the greatest manipulative tools that kids have are temper tantrums. Screaming and crying and banging their fist. Every kid has done it from the beginning of children. Every child throws a temper tantrum to see how far they can go to get their parents to do what they want. A spoiled kid is one who has a continuous temper tantrum all the time. And but what ends up happening is that people who have victim mentalities, and I know because I have had that. I've had a victim mentality, so I know from experience what that's like. And like everybody else, you run into people with victim mentalities all the time. A victim mentality is in and of itself a temper tantrum. Suicide, I'm not downplaying suicide. Suicide, if somebody commits suicide, they've got some serious pain going on in their life. They're not happy. And I'm not trying to take that away from them. But it doesn't change the fact that suicide is a temper tantrum. Violence is a temper tantrum. Getting out an AK-47 and shooting up schools is a temper tantrum. And what I'm trying to say is that on an unconscious level, psychologically, anybody who does any one of those things, even from just walking around with a victim mentality all the way up to mass murder, all of those mindsets are all a way to try to manipulate God into giving you what you want. And, of course, God means the government, or God means the universe, or God means your parents, or whatever it is. People who walk around always angry, always with the silent treatment, or yelling at you, or telling you what to do, or being a doormat and going around and kissing everybody's ass, trying to save everybody. Those are all ways of trying to manipulate people and the universe to get them to do what you want. And anybody who believes, I'm sorry to say this, but anybody who believes that there are beings of light out there masquerading as demons, trying to lie to you, people who believe that demons are out there trying to destroy you, that the government has some secret agenda, that there's a deep state that is thinking about you, wanting to get you, again, I'm not saying there aren't conspiracies out there, but if you are somebody who spends your life searching YouTube for the conspiracies so you can point them out, or you want to go and talk about conspiracies and the Anunnaki, you are in the grip of a lifelong victim mentality. It is a life choice for you. Think about it. Think about the rush you get off of getting angry at whoever they are and talking with other people. Remember Pizzagate? By the way, I still get people who will message me and say that Pizzagate is real. Well, I think I got cut off. Well, let's see if I can get back online here. Doesn't look like it. So I'll see if I come back on here. YouTube, it says YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Okay, so I think I'm still there. Anyway, that's so annoying. God. Anyway, I'm not going to let it bother me. I'm going to follow what I'm learning here. So, point is that if you live in a victim mentality, you are living in a desire to manipulate the universe to feel sorry for you, to give you what you want, and it won't work. Okay, it says I'm not streaming now. So fucking annoying. So give me a second here. What happens if I just do this? Maybe that was it. Maybe I just, no? Anyway. So, there's that. Anyway, I'll check and see if there are any more questions, because I'm just getting so distracted by this crappy internet stream right now. All right, let's see what's going on here. Question, my bad, was wondering if you feel they are helpful. So bear in mind, again, I don't know what you're talking about. You have to write the full question. Now I have to go back to Jacob Locke's earlier question. Okay, so as far as Hinduism and Buddhism are concerned, how do you feel that fits into the understanding of things or ascension? And he says, my bad, was wondering if you feel they're helpful or harmful. Either of them can be either helpful or harmful. Again, it's very general. You're asking a very general question. Any religion, except for, a few, can be helpful or harmful, in my opinion. All right. Modern Mystic asks, question, in energy work, do you recommend sticking one discipline? Sticking probably meant to say with one discipline. Or is it okay to take from any culture that resonates with the individual? You're on my channel, and you can tell that I take from multiple disciplines and multiple cultures. What I do recommend is that you stick with one teacher. Don't jump from teacher to teacher. If you want to get the most out of what I teach, I recommend you go up here to neo.thunderwizard.com. Follow that, because that will give you all of the basic tools for my path, and stick with my path. When you gain some mastery, because there's no way, by the way, there's no way that anybody can watch all of the videos on my channel and or get all of my books and all that and master them in one lifetime. Not even I can do that. So spend some time with my stuff, just with my stuff, until either you get bored or you feel like you've learned everything you can learn, then move on to something else. So there's nothing wrong with combining, but you need to have somebody who has enough mastery in those things to combine them. If I'm assuming that maybe you have some mastery, maybe you don't, but if you're the average person, you're going to cherry pick whatever you want and throw it together, and there's a good chance you're going to end up making yourself sick or get little or nothing out of it. So I do believe that, stick with one thing and master it before you do something else. You want to become a martial artist and you start with jiu-jitsu, master that. Then go into Aikido, then go into boxing, then go, trying to do Kenpo, karate, and Aikido, and jiu-jitsu, and sword fighting all at the same time. You're not going to be able to you're not going to know what the hell you're doing. You're going to be crappy at everything. So, there we go. Let's see here. Looking for the questions again. If you have, I prefer the questions. Alec Masterson is throwing things on here. That doesn't help me to get to anything. It doesn't help you either. I really just want to deal with questions. This isn't a free for all, at least for me anyway. Black Earth Productions question: can you share what happens when Saturn energy becomes inverted in context to the lessons that Saturn is there to forge with us, versus Saturn energy that is in alignment on the upverse? All right, so That's a great question. And what he's asking generally, what is the difference between the lower vibration of Saturn and the higher vibration? So we touched on that a little bit earlier, but I'm happy to touch on it again. Excuse me. Which is that Saturn, like all of the planets and all the energies of all of the planets, is here to guide you to your highest awareness. And Saturn represents restriction, represents the rules, represents discipline. So here's one thing you'll notice. This isn't a slam dunk across the board, but victim mentality people who are into conspiracies, you'll find that they are not disciplined. That when you give them something to do, and if you give them a spiritual practice to do, that takes time and effort and discipline and is not something that comes easily but takes effort, you'll find that they get bored very quickly and they want to stop. If something is unpleasant, they stop almost immediately. So this is the people who complain about it's there's no mystery to me why people who want to talk about reptilians and beings of light who lie to you want to talk about Saturn a lot, is because Saturn is that energy of discipline, and it is that energy of taking responsibility. How did you get where you are? What did you do to get yourself where you are? And so that is what Saturn is about. So if Saturn is, in this incarnation, if Saturn is giving you a lot of stuff to deal with, a lot of challenging things to go through in life, it means that you yourself, before you were born, you made the decision to go, this time around, I really want to learn this lesson, so I'm going to create some challenges. And, for the spirit, for the soul, the challenges that we experience are nothing. It's like us playing a video game. When we play a video game and our guy's having a hard time, yeah, we get into it, but if our guy dies, we go on with our day. We're just fine. But when we get so wrapped up in our life that we think that our challenges are, really as awful as, they appear to be, it means that we're disconnected from our soul memory. Because our soul says, this just isn't that big of a deal. Because when trust me, remember that I told you this. Remember that I told you this. When you're sitting on your deathbed, and like all of us, you're worried about dying, because that's human nature. Remember that I told you this, that once you're out of the body, you're going to take a big breath and you're going to go, okay, wow, that was fun or interesting or whatever it was. And yeah, gosh, I took myself so seriously. I mean, everybody's going to have that same experience of, oh my gosh, I took myself so seriously. I should have just believed in my own essence more and just gone through life. So Saturn is that part of you that wants to put pressure on you so that you will stop taking yourself so seriously. It's hard to do, but it's that simple. People call it surrender. Surrendering to the universe, surrendering to God, surrendering to your soul, surrendering to the light, whatever it is. And you've noticed the same people who talk about this fear say, don't go into the light. Don't trust the light. When you die, don't go into the light. Somebody asked about Buddhism, and I had never read it, but somebody again was all afraid and said, you need to read this book, and it was the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And I glossed over it. And, I'm not a Buddhist for a lot of reasons, but there was something in it that I found very interesting, which is that if I remember correctly, what the Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead says is that when you die, the first thing that happens is that a light will appear. And if you are able to go into that light without any fear, you immediately become enlightened, you become ascended, you achieve enlightenment, moksha, release, immediately. That means every single person listening to me, when you die, when that light appears, if you're able to go into it without any reservations, you'll never have to come back. But what most people do is they are afraid of the light. Why? Because people want to hold on to what they think is important, which is their memories of their past life. This is a question I get all the time. Why don't I remember? I mean, if I'm this all-powerful being, like you say, why can't I remember my past lives? Is my memory being erased? The events of your daily life are nothing. I mean, I was married. Well, I was married for 4 years, but I was with that same woman for 10 years. And I'm looking back on it and I can't remember a hell of a lot. I can't, and I don't care to. It was a phase of my life that I didn't need, and it's over now, and I'm glad it's over. And I look back with some regret on why did I spend so much time with her and why did I live somewhere I didn't, but I don't spend any time thinking about it. I don't remember it. And I don't need to remember it. If the memories of those 10 years were completely taken out of my head, it would have zero effect on my daily life today. So the assumption that people have that if my memory is wiped, then your memories don't mean anything. They're just data. You are an essence. You are a being right now, and you can right now choose to be infinite. You can make that choice right now. Even if you're sitting in a cell, in a prison, in a wheelchair, you can make the decision to be infinite right now. But because you have a story that says you went through this and you lost your legs in an accident and these people did this and you did that and then you have the story behind it, you can't get out of that. So thank the gods that when you die, you forget your past life. That when you're reborn, you forget. Because then you have power. If you live in the moment, and the only thing you have is your essence of who you are, not what you remember, but who you are, you can be anything. That's where your infinity lies. So this is why, getting back to Saturn, Saturn is karma. Why we have all these challenging karmas is so that we will forget about, just let go of things and just be in the moment. And the way Saturn works, the higher vibration of Saturn, which is what my friend's asking me here, is what's the difference? The higher vibration of Saturn is that, good, now you get it. When Saturn is putting his thumb on you, which is your problems, your challenges, when Saturn has his thumb on you, the harder you fight, the heavier his thumb will get. And when you stop and you go, okay, I give up. And you say, what did I do to get myself here? And how can I change the way I'm living? Then Saturn goes, that's all I wanted. I just wanted you to just stop for a moment and take stock of who and what you are. That's all I wanted from you. And now the judge, imagine, you have a Supreme Court judge who is your best friend. He's going to make sure that you get out of jail. He's going to make sure that, he's going to tear up your tickets. He's going to make sure that all of this, the taxes, he'll give you a loophole on the taxes. He'll use all of his power to help you get through life. This is the positive side of Saturn. If Saturn is working for you, you've got the Supreme Court judge in your back pocket. That's what the mafia wants, right? The mafia tries to buy off judges so that they don't go to prison. Make sense? That's to answer your question, that's the difference between the lower vibration and the higher vibration of Saturn. Let's see, where did we go here? So Paul Kapari again. The one thing I want to share with you is you will get better, you will get more out of life if you listen, and when it's appropriate to pay attention and follow direction. I have said to you numerous times to write the word question. So what does that tell me? That tells me you don't pay attention in your life. If you want to get more out of life, pay attention. Put effort into the moment and pay attention. And, learn when it's helpful for you to take direction. Mike, what's the benefit difference of rune divination over the I Ching? So there's 4 different questions in there. The I Ching, what's the benefit difference? I mean, ultimately they're the same. So, they both do the same thing. Rune divination isn't the same as rune shamanism. Rune divination is rune divination. The I Ching is divination. So the I Ching comes from the whole Taoist thing. So if you really want to answer that question, go master Taoism. Then you'll understand what the I Ching is about. If you really want to understand what is the benefit of rune divination, then study and master the runes. Read my 3 books on the runes. When you can master those 3 books, then you'll be able to answer your own question again. So I want to do your question justice, but it's such a general question, it would take me weeks and weeks and weeks to answer that. Okay? The more specific your question, the better I'll be able to answer it for you. Okay, I don't see a question. Timothy Saul, question. Are you familiar with 12-step programs? Yes, I am. What is my take on the process of 12-step recovery? My take on the process of 12-step recovery is that it is an extremely, extremely powerful tool. I forget the word, some kind of behavioral therapy. Here's the one thing, there's 2 things in the 12 steps that are found in every single spiritual practice. There are 2 things in it that I find extremely helpful. One is what's called the inventory. Now the inventory, a lot of people mistake in the 12-step program, and they think an inventory is to write down a history of your life, and I did this, and my mother said that to me, and I stole ice cream when I was 7. That's not an inventory. That's not a 4th step. A 4th step is writing down who you're mad at, what why you're mad at them, and what character defect. So let's talk about resentments for a moment, because we're talking about the victim mentality. You can't have a victim mentality without having resentments. It's impossible. If you don't have any resentments, you're not a victim. The only people who have victim mentality are people who have ongoing resentments, which is, the government did this to me, or so-and-so did that to me, or beings of light stole my memories and forced me to come back. Those are all resentments. And so when you look at your resentments, and before I do that, there's a difference between being resentful and being angry. Those are 2 different things. Anger is a normal defense mechanism that helps us get through life safely and can save our lives. You're driving down the street and somebody cuts you off and almost causes a crash. There's going to be a flash of anger. And you're going to want to stick your fist out the window and yell, "Fuck you," blah, blah. And then you're going to take a deep breath and you're going to go, "Well, I'm really glad that I didn't die." And then you keep driving. It's the strangest thing. You can almost die from an accident, but give yourself a little time to breathe and you'll be right back in the car driving. You'll have forgotten all about it. That's anger functioning well for you. It's a flash that is there to try and protect you from an immediate danger, and then when the danger has dissipated, the anger dissipates, you get on with your life. If you're waking up every day angry at the same people for the same reasons, doing the same thing, that's called a resentment. Resentment means to re-feel. Resentare. To re-feel. You keep feeling the same thing over and over and over. Listen, I do it. I walk through the house all the time, going through what I should have said to somebody 20 years ago. I still do it. So in order to have a resentment, it means that there is some self-protective character defect, as they call it. There's some self-protective instinct that is blown out of proportion. And so you are trying to protect yourself, but that part of you that naturally wants to protect you has gone haywire, and it's causing you problems. And so when you're still angry, 3 weeks later, a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, 30 years later, if you're still angry over something somebody did, then that means that there is something that you still feel vulnerable about. So in the fourth step, you write down these 3 columns: who you're mad at, what they did to make you angry, why you're mad, and what it affects. It affects fear, insecurity, pride, ego, something like that. These are the things that are normal instincts to protect you, but something got out of balance. And so you write that down. Okay, it affects my fear, it affects my finances, it affects my sex life. These are things that we try and protect. Then when you look at that, then there's a 4th column, which is what is your part? So let me share with you, an example of that. My father was an alcoholic. He drank himself to death. He died of bladder cancer. And I was, as you can understand, for all the things that my dad didn't do right, I was very resentful against him for a lot of my life. And I did one of these inventories on him because I wanted to stop being angry with him. I just wanted to get on with my life. And it came down to something very simple, which sounds like I'm minimizing it, but I'm not. But it came down to, my dad, all the things my dad didn't do and all the things my dad did do because of his alcoholism. But what it came down to was this. It was just, my dad didn't love me like a father should love a son. And when I got to the part of what's my fault, how did I help create this resentment? It's real simple. I wanted him to be something he wasn't. And I realized it wasn't fair of me to demand that he live according to my standards, even though my standards make a lot of sense. It's one of the reasons I don't have kids. One of the reasons I don't have kids is because I don't know that I could live up to the standard I have to what a father is supposed to be. So if I can't live up to the standard, I'm not going to have kids. That's why, and another reason why I don't have sympathy for people who complain about being parents. Hey, nobody forced you to do it. Nowadays, you can choose to be a parent. It doesn't just fall out of the sky. Storks don't drop them into your lap. You got to make the decision to have sex without a condom, or, if God forbid there's a hole in the condom or something, there are things called abortions. There are ways not to have kids. So you chose to have them. But, in terms of my dad, it was unfair of me to expect my dad to be something he wasn't. And if he wanted to drink himself to death, that was his right. He had the right to do that. If he didn't, the universe wouldn't have let him do it. The universe would have stopped him. But it didn't. The universe let him drink himself to death. And he has that right. And that, when I saw that I was wrong for wanting him to be something according to my standards and not letting him live his life his own way. Once I saw that, all of the resentment disappeared. So that's the first one. The second, you asked me about the 12 steps. The second thing that I think is the most valuable thing out of the 12 steps. The second one is what's called taking contrary action. People in 12-step groups, and it doesn't matter which one it is, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Al-Anon, which are family members of alcoholics and drug addicts, adult children of alcoholics, Sex Addicts Anonymous. I don't care what 12-step group it is. These are people who do not have the ability to filter their impulses. They have a feeling and they act on it. They can't stop themselves. The Al-Anon, the person who's not the alcoholic but lives with one, can't stop trying to control their life. In fact, I just saw something on Drunk History about Carrie Nation, the woman who started the whole, trying to get alcohol illegal. And what she would do is she would have temper tantrums. She would go into a bar and smash the place up because her husband died of alcoholism. And so she's going to go around and control the whole, that woman needed Al-Anon bad. She doesn't understand the concept of, taking responsibility for your own life, and you're not responsible for what other people do. That's not your problem. It's not your business. So she couldn't stop herself from literally taking axes and chopping, going into bars and breaking everything in sight. She had no impulse control when it came to that. So, in order to, the most powerful tool is to be able to learn how to act completely differently from what your instincts are telling you to do. Your instincts are telling you to put a needle in your neck or pick up a gun or yell at that person or, screw that hooker, whatever it is. And the acting opposite of that. What is the opposite of that? So I have another tool that's very similar to that, which I created, which is, I talk a lot about victims and victim mentality. I've got a brother who, last I heard, was dying on the streets, living on the streets, panhandling, and extremely sick and dying. And not because of alcoholism or drug addiction. He's not an alcoholic or a drug addict. But he refuses any kind of help that would take him out off the street. He refuses to even go into any, government agency and get, because he could apply for and get assistance because he's got a physical illness. Now you talk about it with me. I'm going to tell you where I think that, how he created that for himself. But he's got a legitimate physical illness. He could go in and he could get $1,000 a month easy, and not have to do anything, and he'd have a place to live. And he'd be fine. He refuses to do that. He doesn't have any impulse control over that. He's addicted to being homeless. This is my brother. He lived with me. Now I know how he thinks, because I grew up in the same house that he did. And so whenever I'm in fear, and I'm in fear a lot of the times, I'm Thunder Wizard and all that, but I'm in fear as much as anybody else listening to me. I have the same fears that you do. When I'm in fear and I am not taking action on something that I want in my life, I ask myself, what would my brother do? And I know him well enough to know exactly what he would say in any given situation. So when I say, what would my brother do? I listen to the voice of my brother and I do the exact opposite. Even if what I just heard him say sounds like a really good idea. Because I know what he does gets him where he's at. And if I don't want to be where he's at, I'm going to do the exact opposite. Doing this video is an example. This isn't something I wanted to do today. I had a headache. I wanted to just sit in bed. I had a headache and I didn't want to do this. But, if I don't do this work, I can't live my dream, which is to surf every day. That's my dream. Doing these videos is how I am able to do that. And because that's important to me, I do the exact opposite of what I want to do most of the time. So those are the two things. Being able to take responsibility for your resentments, and being a victim is just a big giant life choice of a resentment, and learning how to act completely opposite from whatever impulse is going through you. Those are the two main things that I think come out of the 12-step programs. All right, so Cute Soda Sofa is going to go goodbye. He doesn't seem to like the channel, and you know what? If you don't like it, you don't have to watch. So this person, I'm going to click what's called hide user on this channel, which means that he can't comment. He can watch all he wants, but he won't be able to comment again. So let's all say goodbye to Cute Soda Sofa. Okay. Where else are we? Black Earth Productions. Okay, no, that's not a question. By the way, Black Earth Productions, those of you who are not familiar with him, he has his own channel. It's an awesome channel. I recommend you go check it out. He also has his own website, blackearthproductions.com. Go check him out. Black Earth Productions question, can you share what happens when an individual comes into their Saturn return? Well, I haven't studied Saturn returns a whole lot. I mean, generally I can tell you what happens is that when we're talking about astrology, you can have any kind of return, a Saturn return, Jupiter return. Right now, I am in a Rahu-Ketu return, which is the north and south nodes of the moon. For me, what that means is that the north and south nodes of the moon represent the karmic forces that bring you into incarnation and out of incarnation. So anytime that you have a Saturn-Ketu return, you go through a rebirth. You die and get reborn. And we go through it depending how old you are, 3 or 4 times in a lifetime. So I'm in this is my second or third Saturn return, 55. So what that means for me is that the forces that brought me into manifestation and the forces that gave me mastery in the previous life that took me out of the last one are now lining up again, which is why I am leaving. There's no coincidence that I'm leaving my my country, and I'm letting go of everything, and I'm going to live out of a suitcase, and I'm going to go reinvent myself in Australia. It's because I'm at that point where my parents are dead, my life partner passed away, all my friends are married with kids and have moved out. I don't have anything keeping me here, so I get to reinvent myself. That's a Rahu-Ketu return. So a Saturn return means that Saturn is going to come back over where Saturn was where you were born. So that is going to be so particular to whatever somebody's situation is. But what I can tell you will be the definite effect of that is, since Saturn represents karma, whatever the effect is, whether it's a release, because this is something really important people need to know about Saturn. Saturn can also free you because Saturn is the judge. So Saturn can put you in jail and Saturn can get you out of jail. Saturn can be the one that says, hey, you know what? This person has been sentenced to 50 years in prison. They've served 5 years, and I just learned this about them. I am going to give them a reprieve, and I'm going to... Saturn can get you out of prison. You don't have to serve that sentence. This is why, again, when Saturn has his thumb on you, the mindset is not, oh my God, which I understand. The mindset is, okay, what did I do to get myself here? And what can I do differently? Sometimes that in and of itself, if you just do that without thinking about anything, next thing you know, you're going to get a reprieve, and the warden's going to knock on your cell door and say, okay, the judge has just given you, wipe the slate clean. You're out of here. So Saturn return could be any of those things. It depends on, is Saturn retrograde? It depends on what house it's in, Let's talk about Saturn a little bit in my chart. I've got Saturn in my 6th house. I've got a combination that created some extremely challenging childhood issues. I've got Mars in my 3rd house, which means, you heard me talk about my brother. Mars in the 3rd house means you're going to have fights with your sibling. That your sibling might even do black magic against you. My brother has committed himself. If you talk to him, if you ever were to talk to him, he would tell you why I am the cause of all of his problems. His little brother, I'm 5 years younger than him, and he would tell you why it's my fault that he's on the street. He's been doing this his whole life. So that's the 3rd house. Well, my brother made my life a living hell. And then Saturn in the 6th house. Saturn, the 6th house is the house of enemies. So when Saturn is in your 6th house, it means that you are going to get picked on. I got picked on as a little kid. I mean, nobody messes with me now, but when I was a little kid, I was the littlest kid in school. I got picked on everywhere I went. I got beat up and tossed around. I mean, it was no fun growing up. I did not have a good time growing up as a kid. I mean, that's part of my PTSD when I grew up. I went through so much as a kid. But Saturn in the 6th house and Mars in the 3rd house, that combination, because they're aspecting each other. And those are houses, especially the 6th house. The 6th house is what's called a death house, because it's the house of debts and disease and enemies. So when you have Saturn in there, first off, it means in the beginning that's what you're going to have: disease, debts, enemies, persecution. But what happens is those negative planets in those negative houses, they get stronger over time and they end up doing the opposite. So Saturn in the sixth house means that as you get older, nobody fucks with you. You can win any court case, and now, literally now, I mean, I know guys who are, I've known them for my whole life, but guys who are martial arts masters, and just by me being in their presence, they get afraid of me. These are guys that like go around the world teaching martial arts, and they're afraid they don't know anything about me. They're just afraid of me. Because that's Saturn in the sixth house says nobody's going to fuck with you. You are bulletproof. So Saturn can make you bulletproof. Saturn can make you so strong and so powerful that nobody ever messes with you. It just depends on which side of the planet you're on. And this is true with all of them. This is true with the moon, it's true with the sun, it's true with Jupiter. Even the ones that are supposedly really good for you, if you get on the wrong side of that, it could make things miserable for you. So it's important to understand, you can't just generalize any of the planets. You've got to, really understand them. And the way to get through any planetary problem is this mindset of, what did I do to get myself here? The universe wants to help me. This situation wants to help me. That attitude and taking action based on that attitude will overcome any planetary problem. I don't care what it is. So this is why astrology should only be used to help you, and not to be look for, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that. So to answer your question, I don't know if I answered your question about Saturn return, but Saturn return could be anything. It just means you're going to go back to what Saturn was doing when it brought you into manifestation, and it's going to be a level up every time. Saturn is going to operate on a higher level, whether that means experiencing a challenge or whether it's the judge giving you a get out of jail free card. It's going to be, something that has to do with you owning your karma from previous lives and this life, and learning how to take responsibility and move forward. It's going to have something having to do with that, whether it's challenging or otherwise. All right, what else here? Rogue Magi question: are the planets to the sun the same as the different bodies, e.g. emotional, mental, are to the human soul? I'm trying to understand how and why planets are seen as conscious beings. So, Rogue Magi, this is not an attack. My question, I have this question, do you smoke a lot of weed? Maybe you don't, but you are in your head a lot. You think if you figure things out, you're going to be okay. Trying to figure everything out is a way of trying to control things. You cannot control anything other than the choices you make in any given moment. It's the only thing you have any control over, and even then, that control is limited by how much consciousness you have about your unconscious mind. Other than that, you can't control anything. So figuring this out isn't going to help you. You don't have to believe that the planets are conscious beings. I'm okay if you can't do that. Let's talk about what the planets are. So, an astronomer is going to laugh at an astrologer and say, talking about the planets moving, blah, blah, blah. The sun doesn't do this and the earth rotates. The sun doesn't, blah, blah, blah. You don't know what you're talking, the whole astrology is nonsense. Well, the word planet means traveler. So when I talk about Jupiter and when I talk about Mars and when I talk about Saturn, if you don't want to see it as being the literal planets in the sky, I'm okay with that. I'm talking about the forces that they represent. And these things move through our lives. The planets, they travel through our lives. So, I think a general thing I can tell you is that I would recommend doing more meditation. Doing Qigong, go up to courses.thunderwizard.com. If you don't already have it, get Celestial Qigong. Start doing some energy work that's going to get you intuitively connected to the universe so that you don't have to think about things so much. You think too hard. you know, when I get that squinty look on my face, are the planets to the sun. So this isn't really a question. Here's you trying to figure it out, and it helps you to think of the planets' relationship to the sun similar to the way the emotional, mental bodies are to the human soul. If that helps you, then go ahead with that. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I think that's the best way to help you is, just to cut through it and say, I want to help you stop thinking so much. And you don't have to, here's the great thing about everything. You don't have to understand any of it. This is why I teach people Qigong and doing things like Qigong, yoga, meditation, mantra meditation. Doing these things are good because they give you a visceral experience. And anything that gives you a direct visceral experience is far superior than anything that you can read in a book. And I talked about this last time. I roommated with a guy who said, "Oh yeah, I'm meditating on the chakras." And I said, "Really? How?" And he pulled up a book. He said, "I'm reading this book." And I looked through this book and he's got all these things underlined. I said, "So do you meditate?" And he goes, "Well, I read this and then I think about it." And I said, "That's all intellectual. So you're really not meditating on the chakras. You're reading a book about the chakras, and to you that's what meditation is." I said, "That's not meditation. You don't have any real personal experience with working with the chakras. You just think about them. That means nothing. So your intellectual understanding of what the planets are doesn't mean anything. What is going to be helpful is if you can have a personal, visceral experience with it. This is what Qigong, yoga, mantra meditation, all of these things, even just going out in the wilderness and just feeling the power of the trees. Can you feel the trees when you're walking through the forest? Can you feel when you go up to the Sierras, if you ever get a chance, go up to the Sierras and go up to 10,000 feet and put, a tent up and lie in the tent on the ground there. And if you don't feel something coming up from the ground, then I don't know what to tell you, because I can feel it. There's a lot of power there. See if you can get a visceral experience. This is what I'm trying to teach. This is why I'm constantly saying, don't spend all your time watching my videos. Go do all this stuff. Go click on those things and go do them. Get a personal experience. Doing Qigong, I don't know how it works. There was one of my senior students, not my senior student, he was senior to me when I was studying. And he couldn't grasp how to send energy. And I was better than he was because I could just let go. My teacher would say, just be fire, crack, just be wood, just be metal. I could get that. I could just go be that, and just without knowing what the hell that meant. He couldn't. He would want to go, okay, so for fire, you're really flicking the wrist like this, right? And so if I flick the wrist, he was trying to figure it out, and he could never get the energy to move. So I recommend that for you. Do some things that give you a personal, visceral experience and stop thinking so much, because it's not going to help you. It's not going to give you what you want. Black Earth Productions. Okay, his Saturn is in Virgo. All right, so I hear what you're saying. So he's agreeing with me about that. Okay. Evan LS, if you have a question, are you new to the channel? Write the word question, because otherwise I don't know if you're just dropping a comment, and I tend to pass those up unless I see the word question. So if you're new to this and you want to keep coming back to these question and answers, please write the word question and I'll know to answer that. You say, have you discussed the flat earth theory recently? Why? It seems that there's many flat earthers who go over astrology as well. Are you asking me if I'm a flat earther? Because the answer to that question is no. And if somebody is a flat earther, what are they doing following astrology? What? A flat earther that doesn't make any sense. The whole idea of astrology has to do with round bodies, things circling around round bodies. And they don't believe in that. It doesn't make any sense. There was a video I was gonna rip off of YouTube and bring back, which is one of the guys, some of these flat earthers are so stupid. I'm sorry. They're just so uneducated and so incredibly stupid. One guy he said, gravity can't exist and we don't live on a ball, and he had an orange. And he was talking about how, watch, and he was pouring water on the orange and saying, see, there's no film of water on there. I can't put a little boat on it. And I'm like thinking, because you're on a big giant ball that has gravity, and so the gravity is pulling all the water off of your tiny ball. Anyway, so he was saying, see, that's why it's impossible that we live on a round planet. But what happens when you go up in space and you're no longer, when you're out of the gravitational field of the Earth, if you take like a cloth and you dip it in water and you hold it up, the water stays around the cloth. It doesn't drip anywhere. And you can squeeze it like this and the water stays around the cloth. And there was a video of somebody in the space station. I was going to show that and say, flat earthers, there you go. What are you talking about? But that was too much work, so I didn't do it. So I'm not a flat earther. My father was a physicist. My father was one of the big influences, and he in the space race. In fact, when he was alive, held the title of having designed more satellites than any one man in the world. And a lot of his satellites are in the Smithsonian. So flat earthers are going to have a hard time convincing me that the world is flat. My dad would come home from work with pictures from satellites that he made, and look at this and look at that. And so unless you're telling me my dad was a lot of things, but he wasn't a liar. So if you want to call my dad a liar, we're going to have some problems. So I don't buy into that, obviously. Okay. That's it. I don't have any more questions. I've been on for 2 hours, so I'm going to call it quits. Now, before I go, I have to do some business here. neo.thunderwizard.com. People keep asking me, how can I get the most out of your work? Where do I start? You need 4 tools to just lay the groundwork for getting the most out of what I teach. First thing is, you need to know what your destination is, which means you need to know where your soul wants you to go, what your destiny is. That is number 1. It's called find your perfect career. Career means the universe paying you to be your true self. Doesn't necessarily mean what you do for money, although for most people, that's what it means. But it means being rewarded by the universe for being who you truly are. Most people do not know what that is. You need that. That's number 1. Number 2, once you have the destination, you have the map, you need a vehicle to get you there. The vehicle is life force energy. We've been talking about that. And I teach that on the Celestial Qigong, although you can just go onto my channel, the free channel, and do the Qigong there. But I recommend that you get the Celestial Qigong and learn how to tap directly in to the universe. This particular energy practice that I teach is the highest level energy practice that I've found, and I went and studied a bunch of different things. I've had energy masters, Tai Chi masters who have just done a few of my exercises tell me in their whole years of teaching they've never felt anything this powerful. I've had people say, I did that exercise and this blue being appeared to me and told me, I'm not saying that's going to happen for you, but I'm just telling you what people have told me. That's the second thing. You need life force energy power to fuel you to your destiny. Third thing is you need to know what the rules of the road are. You know your destination, you have a vehicle, you need to know how to navigate. And that is the 5 rules to master the matrix. Please go and get that. That is one of the most valuable things I can teach you. You don't have to understand anything. You don't have to be emotionally, feeling good all the time. You don't have to intellectually know what the hell's going on. If you follow these 5 rules to master the matrix, which is life force energy that you live in this bubble of life force energy that we call 3-dimensional space-time. 3-dimensional space-time will obey your commands if you know how to get it to respond to you. And the 5 rules to master the matrix is how to get it to respond to you. And then the 4th is this. We're going to have deep. You see, there's a lot of people coming on with really general questions. That's okay. That's what this free channel is about. People that don't, that are new to this. But for those of you who want to either come and sit in on a master's class, or if you've been following, been reading the books, been watching the videos, you have very specific questions, then I want you to go again to neo.thunderwizard.com, which will take you to the thunderwizard.com page, and I want you to sign up. I want you to subscribe to the Manifestation Mastery course, where we have live Q&As for people who have been doing this. If you haven't been doing this long, you can still benefit from it because, like I said, it's like sitting in on a master's class. And you can really learn because when people know how to ask me the right questions, especially about what I teach, I go really into depth. I love answering questions when they're specific and they're good questions. So those are the 4 tools at neo.thunderwizard.com. I recommend that you go there. Any last minute questions? I'll check and see. If not, we'll move on here. So Vladimir Obukov question: how far does DMT get you? Which kind? I just talked about celestial qigong. If you really want to get pure, unrefined DMT, you got to make it in your own body. The stuff you put in your body is not going to have the same effect. So for that, go to either courses.thunderwizard.com or go to neo.thunderwizard.com and get the celestial qigong. So to answer your question, DMT can take you very far if it comes from the right source. If you're taking it, if you're taking it from an external source, you're only harming yourself. It blows your circuits out. It blows holes in your aura. It does all kinds of very devastating things. You can have visions, but you don't know if those visions are real or if they're your own narcissistic fantasies. The only way to know that is to get it, is to create it, to get your body to create it. This is, what happened was around 2,000 years ago, maybe not that long ago, all cultures used some kind of power plant, cannabis or even alcohol, mushrooms, anything. There are all kinds of different ways that people got power hallucinogens in them to release the DMT, because this is what happens. These chemicals come in and they force your brain to release all kinds of chemicals. It puts your body into a near-death experience. So your body thinks it's dying and it releases all of the DMT, all that kind of stuff. But the Taoists in China, and the Vedics in India, they stopped using power plants. And the reason they stopped using power plants is because they started inventing spiritual technologies that would train the glands of the brain like muscles to become stronger and stronger and stronger to create more of it. This is what yoga is. This is what Qigong is. This is what deep level meditation is. Not the Zen stuff, although that's okay too. We're talking about real mystical technique meditation is designed to get the brain to release all kinds of things, not just DMT. So it can get you everywhere if it comes from internally. If it comes from externally, you're only going to make things worse and you make yourself weak. And then you won't be able to, ideally, when you have opened up the centers naturally from within, you can go into trance and leave your body whenever you want, especially at higher levels. You can't do that if you've been taking these things your whole life. You become dependent upon an outside influence to give you a mystical experience. Did that answer your question? Okay. And I'm telling you, anybody who talks about DMT, and if you're talking about ingesting it, my opinion is you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You think you do, but you really don't. Until you can create it internally and have those experiences and leave your body internally by choice, you don't know the first thing about any of these chemicals. Okay? That's my thought about that. All right, so that's it for me. Again, go to courses.thunderwizard.com to find my books, to find my videos, to find all of my courses, everything that I offer. Go to neo.thunderwizard.com if you want to get the basic stuff necessary to make it in this path that I teach. And with that, my friends, I will say a good evening to you, and I look forward to talking to you guys later. Thank you for all the great questions.